Well, police in Seattle and its surrounding suburbs are reportedly warning homeowners about this group that's going around knocking on people's doors in luxury waterfront locations there. The people produced these official-looking documents which claim they are the rightful owners of those properties where they're knocking on doors. Investigators say these people are part of the so-called sovereign citizens movement, and they have been known to operate in other parts of the country, too. Their group believes that they own all of the land between Alaska and Argentina and all the islands in between. Unfortunately, Edmonds, Seattle falls between that land. We're joined by Jason Rantz. He's the host of the Jason Rantz Show on KTTH Radio in Seattle. So, Jason, this is happening in other places, not just Seattle. We're hearing instances of this in North Carolina, even here on the East Coast in Maryland. So what is this? I mean, aside from it sounding like pretty much every American's worst nightmare, what are we dealing with?
Yeah. I mean, it does really sound like it's coming from a horror movie. They're the Moorish sovereign citizens. They're essentially an extremist squatters group where they go in and they generally target homes that have been recently sold with the intent of squatting. Now, obviously, when they knock on someone's door and someone answers, they have the intent of trying to con their way in to take over the land. They believe that they settled in this land prior to the government being established. Thus, none of the laws actually apply to them. Now, the weird thing about this here, at least in the Seattle area, is that they're not actually breaking any laws. They are polite. They're forceful, but they are polite when they're having conversations with these homeowners that they're trying to dupe. And when they're told to leave, they leave the property. And so the police are basically just keeping an eye on them. The FBI is involved. They're aware of what's going on, mostly because when there is an empty home, whether it's in the waterfront of Edmonds or Woodway or wherever it is they're going, they just want to make sure that they're keeping these people out. But as of right now, they haven't gotten violent, which we can't say has not been the case in the past outside of this general area. Well,
that's a real blessing. They haven't gotten violent yet with any of these houses that they're trying to sneak into and squat in. Jason, let's pull up everything we know about this group. So they call themselves the Moorish sovereign citizens. We know they were founded in 1990. It's estimated there are about 3,000 to 4,000 followers in this group all across the United States. And as you mentioned, Jason, they believe that because they're part of this so-called sovereign nation, they're immune from most U.S. laws. Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center, Jason, we also know, has labeled them an extremist group, which honestly sounds a little bit more accurate, right? I mean, these are people that are trying to steal other Americans' homes.
Yeah, I mean, they're crazy people. I mean, that's what we would generally call someone who knocks on our doors and demands that they somehow own land that we obviously know they don't. And so, yes, are they an extremist group in the sense that they pose a direct threat? Not in this instance, certainly not yet. But I think there's reasonable concern that if you're a homeowner who does feel threatened by some weirdo who's coming up to your door and demanding that you leave, if you're someone who's armed, you might grab that weapon to defend your house. And so, again, that's part of the reason why we're spending so much time on this, getting this story out there. It's not necessarily new for this region, just because we've had instances of this happening over the years. And again, generally, it's figured itself out. But no one's expecting that knock at their front door and having to encounter people who are making these kinds of claims. But in a lot of ways, it's very peak 2020. I mean, of all the years that we're going to get these kinds of stories, 2020 seems like the right one.
Jason, do you have any advice for those of us who are just hearing about this for the first time? People who might be worried about this happening in their neighborhood or in their state, how to respond? Like, let's say these Moorish sovereign citizens show up at your house door tomorrow. What do you recommend you say to them to kind of move them along and get them out of there with any kind of incident?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually really simple. Tell them that they have to leave your property, that they are trespassing, and that you are calling the police. And then actually call the police. They're not allowed to be there. In cases here in Edmonds, what they decided to do after they called police actually made contact with at least 2 of the members of the group, and they served them with criminal trespass warnings. So now if they were to come back to that home and bother the homeowner again, they actually are breaking the law under Washington state law, and they can, in fact, be arrested. And as far as the reporting goes, they're aware of that, and which is kind of weird because they say none of the laws apply to them. They're not returning home to the homes in which they've got criminal trespass orders against them.
It's an interesting take on the way stuff is supposed to work, but you give us some good advice there. You want to build a police record if you have interactions with these people so they know how to help you. Jason Rantz in Seattle, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jillian.